Welcome to the Scalable Real Estate Investing Podcast, where we discuss the most scalable strategies, tools, and approaches to successfully invest in real estate. Learn how to make the most impact of your time, automate your real estate investing business, find off-market deals with minimum time invested, and leverage your capital to create as many income streams as possible so that you can achieve true financial independence. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Mason Clement. Hi, Scalable Investors. Before we get into today's episode, I'd like to tell you about a group that I'm a part of called HiveMind. If you're serious about taking the next step in your real estate investing career, then this is definitely a group that you need to join. Some of our members are making $90,000 and more per month, and as much as $300,000 on just one deal. And at the same time, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars like you typically would joining other mastermind groups. This is only $99 per month. And when you join, you'll gain access to a robust integrated CRM software that allows you to track your leads, run automated triggers, and ultimately scale your marketing efforts. So the difference here is that you're not left high and dry, but gain access to a support network that allows you to use that tool and learn from other more experienced real estate investors. So to learn more, go to scalablerei.com/HiveMind. That's HIVEMIND. Thanks a lot. Let's get into the episode. Hi, Scalable Investors. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Scalable Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Mason Clement, and today we have with us Mark Owens, who is a pretty remarkable real estate investor. He was able to quit his day job in the early 2000s, leveraging his rental portfolio, which eventually grew to over 100 units, including some mid-sized apartment buildings, and he's wholesaled over 200 deals. He's began his career in 2002 over in Baltimore, Maryland. And I don't want to steal his thunder too much. So without further ado, Mark, how are you doing today?
Hey, good, Mason. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I'm glad to have you. So what I'd like to ask every guest that's on the show is first just to get into your background and what got you started in real estate.
Sure. So I was in IT back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was making really good money. And I was investing in the stock market, and I was making decent money in the stock market, and I was under the mistaken impression that I actually had some kind of skill at it. What I didn't really realize was that the market was just shooting up, and it was bringing everybody with it, even people like me. And I guess it was around the year 2000, 2001, there was like a significant dip in the market, and I had lost everything that I had gained. I still had my principal in there. I still had about $130,000, $140,000 in there, but I had lost the $100,000 that I'd made. So I hurried up and pulled everything out. And I was just thinking, like, man, where can I invest my money? I mean, I want my money to work for me, and I don't really like this, the stock market, ups and downs, and where you have very little control over it. I don't have the time to sit down and analyze stocks all day and buy on the dips and sell on the highs. So I just thought, what's a safer investment, something that's more predictable? And it was real estate. I thought about it. People are always going to need a place to live. They're not making any more land. This is it. And it's harder to build houses today than it was 50 years ago because of different zoning requirements and environmental concerns and things like that. So I just thought, like, residential real estate just seems to me like it's a very safe investment if I buy correctly. And what I did was I put together a spreadsheet, just an Excel spreadsheet, and I wanted to calculate what my return on my investment was. And I was looking at a cash on cash return. I wasn't considering anything like mortgage pay down or appreciation or anything like that. My thoughts were, if I invest $100,000, I want to make $3,000 per year net. I want that to be my profit. I want to make a 30% cash on cash return on this money. So it wouldn't have been 3,000, it'd have been 30,000. So that's the model that I followed. And back then, this is around 2002 when I bought my first buildings. Back then you could put 10% down, finance the rest. And so it took me about 6 months to find a deal that really fit my criteria. Solid. It was a 3-unit apartment. It was an old house. I think it was built in like 1880. It was cut up into 3 apartments. It was zoned for 3, the utilities were there for 3 units. And there was a large garage in the back that was rented out to air conditioning, HVAC guy for $250 a month. And he used it to manufacture his ductwork and stuff like that for jobs that he was doing. So that particular property fit my profile. It was interesting because the house was actually filthy on the inside. I mean, when you went in, there were like literally like nests of roaches in the corners of the ceilings, and it was pretty disgusting. And I wouldn't even sit in the kitchen. I mean, it's like I want to get in and get the hell out. I don't want to hang out in there. But the numbers fit my profile right, and I thought, man, this thing's a moneymaker. I get an exterminator in here and get the rents up, and I remember walking out the front door with my agent, and as I was walking in, another potential buyer was walking in as I was walking out, and I could see the look on her face of like horror when she saw the roaches, and I was just like, yes, like that's good. I don't want the competition, and she's going to see that, and within 30 seconds she was back out the front door, and I ended up getting that deal. That was the first one, and I was back then, again, it was 10% down and closing costs. So I could afford, with the money that I had, it was $75,000 for that building. So altogether, it was around $10,000, $11,000 with closing costs. And at that rate, I could buy 10 of these things before I run out of money. And that was it. And I was making good money at the time, so I was able to continue to save to, invest more in these properties. But that's how the whole thing started. When I started, like, I had no intention of getting out of IT. I had no intention of making a living off of this. For me at the time, what real estate was it was an investment, but it was insurance, so that in the event that something happened to me, that my family would continue to get some kind of income from somewhere, because I was an independent contractor, which meant if I don't work, I don't get paid. If I get hit by a car, I get sick, whatever happens, there's no money coming in. And my wife wasn't working at the time. We had a son that was a couple of years old, and she decided to get back to school for a couple of years. So, it was just, we were depending on me. And at the time I was making about 130 to 150 a year as an independent contractor. And I did the math, and I thought, well, what's the minimal amount that I need per month to just pay my bills? Not get rich, just, pay the heat for my house and the gas and electric, car payment, insurance, some, ramen noodles. Like, what's the minimal amount that I need? And it was a couple $1,000s. And I thought, okay, well, if I get 10 houses and I'm making $200 a month off each house, then that's going to cover me in the event that something happens. And that was my initial goal with this thing, was protection, was income protection. I had no idea that I was going to get to where I am now. Had no idea. And but what happens is the cash flow, it's like a drug. It becomes addictive. It's like you buy a house, you make a few $100s a month. The first house I made I think it was $325 per month. And I just bought a new car a couple of months earlier, and I remember my payment was $312 a month. And I remember sitting at the settlement table and doing the math in my head and coming to the realization that not only are my tenants paying for my property, they're paying for my car. Because my net cash flow, after already taking out vacancies and repairs and all that stuff, my net cash flow is going to be $325. My car payment's $312. So for me, that was just, it just lit my fire. And then I just kept going. And back then, let's go back. This is 2002. There was no Google, there's no Facebook, there are no meetups. I wasn't aware of any real estate investor association meetings or anything like that. I was solo. I didn't know any other landlords for the first couple of years that I was doing this. And there's a longer learning curve like that. There was no YouTube. There was no YouTube videos I could watch. I'd never heard of the Burr method. I don't know if anybody had heard of the Burr method back in those days, but that's where I started. With that, I just continued to buy properties. Again, my goal was to just be able to own enough rentals where, in the event that I couldn't work, that I had enough income coming in off my rentals where, I could cover like my minimum required, bills. And that was it. And again, I had no dream that, the thought that people owned 100 units, like that never even occurred to me. I'm like, man, if I get as soon as you get one, everybody thinks you're rich. And, when you get 3 or 4 or 5, people look at you and they're like, really? Like, they're puzzled. Like, how can somebody own 3 or 4 or 5 rental properties? by the time you get to 10, you're like in a whole different plane, like where people don't even, it just seems like people just don't even know how to interact with you. Like it's just so far above the people that I was hanging out with, just so far above what their, their own, self-imposed ceiling was, like how far people thought they could actually go. And I was kind of just penetrating that, just busting right through it. And I soon realized, it was a couple of years into it, I was like, man, if I just keep going, like I can quit this damn job. Like I don't have to stay in IT. Like I can make enough money off my rentals. My wife's going to start working again. Like I can just completely get out of this. And it was actually around, I think it was the end of 2005 that I got out of IT completely. My wife finished school. She became a nurse. I left my my income fluctuated 130 to 150 a year. I walked away from that. I was already making 50 a year off my rentals. My wife was starting at 50 a year as a nurse. So there was like a $30,000 to $50,000 shortfall. And I thought, well, I can make that. Like I can stand on a corner and bum money and make 30 to 50,000 a year. I could go pick up trash and make that. So it was an easy jump. And at the same time, right at that time, I started wholesaling. I partnered up with a guy that was already a successful wholesaler. And the next year I made far more money than I'd ever made in IT off of wholesale. It was absolutely crazy. This was again before the 2007, 2000, that bubble popped. So for the next few years, I had just absolutely cleaned up with the wholesaling, and then took that money and kept buying rental properties. I didn't buy a bigger house. In fact, I still live in the same townhouse that we bought in I think it was 96 or 7, somewhere in that range. Still live in the same house, still drive a Jeep. My standard of living my material standard of living hasn't increased like my income has. I go on a lot of vacations. My wife and I own a condominium on the ocean in the Cayman Islands, but like, just if you just see me walking around the neighborhood, you would never have any idea that I'm doing as well as I'm doing. And part of the reason why is because I delayed that gratification. Because guys, we want to get out and get like $100,000 car. That's what we want to do. We want to get the big ass house. They're like trophies that we can show our friends. And I'm like, man, I'm thinking long term. I want to take the money I'm making and I want to buy more assets that generate cash flow, because I saw that freedom to me was more important than trophies. Like being able to, where I'm at today, where I work 10 minutes a day, like that to me was more valuable than having a nice car or a giant house or a Rolex that, as far as I know, Rolexes have the same number of hours as a Timex. So, I'll stick with the Timex and take that money and go buy a rental property and let my tenants pay for my vacation. That's my own philosophy. I'm not saying it's the right one. That's the one that works for me.
Okay. So as you're growing your rental portfolio, are you pushing all these to the same property manager, or are you self-managing them, or how does that work?
Man, I manage them myself.
Okay.
And here's, people ask me now here's a disclaimer. I've sold 2/3 of my portfolio the last 4 or 5 months because the market is hot. I did very well, and I don't have to, I can live for the next 200 years without doing anything. So it was a good time for me to sell. As far as self-management goes, people, when I owned over 100 units and I self-managed, people thought like, how the hell do you do it? And I literally worked about 2 hours a day. And people are like, how bullshit? Like, how the fuck do you work 2 hours a day? You own 100 doors. It's easy, man. I delegate and I automate. Just about all of my bills are automatically paid. If there's something I don't want to do, I get somebody else to do it. And it costs me money to do that, but I make enough money where I can afford to pay out. I don't cut my grass. I haven't cut my grass at my house. I think I cut it once when we bought it. And then I gave my lawnmower to a friend and hired somebody to do it. My free time is worth more than the 20 or 30 bucks it costs me to pay somebody else to cut the damn grass. I'm not going to go paint my units. I'm not going to pick up trash. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I pay other people to do it. And that's all factored into my spreadsheet. So by the time it was all said and done, after I'd already delegated everything, and I had a crew of 5 guys that worked for me and another friend full time for years, where and they were trained. Like they would go to the vacant unit, they would make a list of what they need to bring it up to my standards. They would go to Home Depot, buy the materials. Home Depot calls me up to get authorization to pay for the materials. Then they go do the work. There are times where a tenant moves out, my guys go in, do everything. I find another tenant, replace that tenant with another tenant, and I do all this without leaving my house because I have other people doing everything. And by doing that, working a couple hours a day and saving, at the time I was, well, up until recently, I was bringing in maybe $90,000 a month in rent. If I got to pay a property manager 8% of that, that's $7,000 pay cut I'm going to take. So I'm going to give up working 2 hours a day and lose $7,000 a month. I thought, man, I'll work 2 hours a day for $7,000 a month. And the only work that I was doing was the stuff that I actually enjoyed doing. The stuff that I didn't like doing, I gave to other people. So that was that was kind of my transition.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So in your bio, you mentioned that you were essentially able to design your business around your life. So could you go into that a little bit more? I think you've hit on it a little bit.
Yeah, I did. For me, my life is, I like to travel. And, now that we're finally opened back up, well, I don't know how long it's going to last, but, because the COVID we're in a point now where people are traveling. And just in the last 6 weeks, I've been where have I been? Cancun, the Florida Keys, the Outer Banks, North Carolina, went out to Vegas, went to California. That's just in the past like 6 weeks. And that's what I like to do. That's my lifestyle. That's what I prefer. My wife and I have an RV. We go away like every other weekend. And I designed my business so that all that I need is a cell phone and internet, and I can run my business from anywhere on the planet. All that I need to do is be able to call people and tell them what to do. And especially now, it's so easy, like with Cash App and stuff like that, where I can literally like be sitting on the beach in Fort Myers, and the carpet guy says, hey, it's $1,200, and I can Cash App him $1,200. I'm just sitting on the damn beach, and he gets paid instantly. I love that. And I was really resistant to it for a while. I didn't want tenants sending me money through Cash App or Venmo or PayPal or Zelle or any other method. And then, one of my friends said to me something to this effect: are you serious? Like, somebody wants to give you money and you're going to be picky about how you get it? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I thought about it, and I thought, it is pretty stupid. If somebody wants to, send me $1,300 in rent, they can mail me a check, or they can send it through like Zelle. Yeah, now I see the value. At first, I'm kind of like a lot of us, especially I'm older, I'm 56, you get stuck in your ways, whatever they are. The same thing's going to happen to you, where you're just used to doing things a certain way. And then something new comes up and we're resistant to that change. And then most of the time, after we make the change, we're glad we did. And sometimes we wonder why we waited so long. So the electronic payments for me were one of those things where, I was resistant to it for different reasons. And now I embrace it and I love it. And it makes my life very simple and just a little bit easier.
Okay. And are you still wholesaling deals as well, or just doing your rentals?
Yeah, I haven't been wholesaling much for the past 5 years. If something comes up, if somebody calls me up and they've got a steal, and I know somebody else that would take that, I'll talk to the wholesaler and say, listen, I got a buyer, you want to co-op this or whatever, I can get us another 5 or 10,000 for it. And just about every time that ever happens, that people say, that's great, sounds good. I have enough money now where I don't want to work that hard to make more. My free time is worth more than the money. I could start wholesaling. I could start tomorrow, build a business with the cold calling and the text messages and all that crap that people are doing, and probably make $250,000 in the next year. But I don't want to put the time into it. My free time is worth more than that $250,000. And it's not, I don't have like $10 million in the bank. I'm not making $5 million a year. I'm just saying, for me, the thing that I value is my free time and being able to, like today, when we're done, I can go to lunch wherever I want. If I want to go buy a plane ticket and fly to California, I can do it. If I want to, go shopping and buy a whole new thing of clothes to wear this winter, I can do it. That's what I value. And I have enough money to do that. So I'm in a good position where I don't have to work for the money anymore. And wholesaling is hard, man. Wholesaling is a lot of work. Anybody that tells you otherwise isn't doing it, or isn't doing it in a way that I know of. I know people that are doing it remotely, and they're getting the VAs to do it and all that stuff. But I tell you, you get VAs to do it, and you get somebody in the Philippines talking to these sellers, you're going to miss a lot of good deals. You're going to leave a lot of money on the table, because a lot of times you can talk to a seller and you can establish a rapport with them that a VA could never do. And in that rapport, you can find out that maybe they have another property that they're interested in selling, or maybe you can figure out a creative way to get them what they want, where you're still going to benefit from it. And VAs aren't, they're not able to do that. They're typically just taking the basic information, and then people look at it and say, oh, that's a deal, that's not a deal, that's a deal, it's not a deal. Well, it might not look like it's a deal on that piece of paper, but if you actually had a conversation with the seller, you might have been able to turn that thing into a gold mine. And that's my own opinion. I'm sure that some of the people that are doing that would probably disagree with that, but that's okay. Whatever works for you.
Yeah, that's actually what I was speaking with my last guest about, Nick Perry, is like kind of the difference between working with VAs or working with like high caliber, just American folk, like in person in your own office and stuff like that. So I'm definitely experiencing that myself, where I have VAs, but I have a KPI, like each one needs to bring in like 2 contracts per week. And sometimes we'll do that, but other times not. And it's like, what's causing that? And should I just be doing this myself? And I can't right now, because I'm also trying to make that jump from the day job to doing this full time. And I'm sure once I do it full time and able to have a more hands-on approach with a lot of this, then it will just skyrocket. And then maybe at that time it'll make more sense to find someone to work with in person and just kind of duplicate myself and instill all my knowledge into them and happily pay them part of it through commission,
Sure. So the one piece of advice that I give everyone in this business, no matter what you're doing, is buy rentals, man. Buy the rentals, because this market, it ain't gonna stay like this. It's gonna change. I'm not saying it's gonna happen this week. It might not happen for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. But what happens is a lot of the wholesalers, and I saw this happen 2006, 2007, 8, 9, 10, up until today, a lot of wholesalers and rehabbers, the market's going up, up, up. They're making a ton of money. Then the market stops, and their income gets cut in half or worse. And what happens is they're used to living on that income that they're getting. And then when it gets cut, they're in trouble. They were out buying the toys, the jet skis, the this and the that. And when their income gets cut, they lose a lot. Where the people that I saw that were successful was they took the money, instead of buying the jet skis and the $80,000 BMW, they bought more rental properties. And then when the market changed, they still had income coming in. The mistake that a lot of people make is they depend on just that there's those streams of income, which is wholesaling and rehabbing. And when the market changes, those things, here's the order that it happens. The first thing that happens is the wholesalers either go out of business, or their business slows down significantly because now people stop buying. The second group of people that take a big hit are the rehabbers, because now people aren't buying. They just spent all this money to rehab the house. Now it's sitting on the market. They're paying their hard money lender every month. They're losing their profit. They're seeing their profit completely disappear. And when they finally do sell the house, they didn't make nearly as much as they thought they were going to make originally, because the market went down. And then the hard money lenders get their ass kicked. They're the last ones, but it happens because now a lot of the retail, the rehabbers can't make the interest payments anymore. Maybe they got 3, 4, 5 projects going on. They're paying out $4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, $10,000 a month in interest payments. They're running out of money. They can't make their payments. The landlords, man, we just keep on going. When the shit hits the fan and the economy takes a dump, most of my rentals are like Class C neighborhoods. My rents go up. When everybody else's stuff is taking a shit, my rents go up, because the people that are renting in the A neighborhoods, the people that are renting there, they see the economy tightening up, they get fearful of their job, or losing some income or something like that. So they want to scale back. So they go from the A neighborhoods to the B neighborhoods. The people in the B neighborhoods do the same thing. They're like, shit, I want to rent a house, but I don't know if it's really a good idea to spend this much. Let me look in this neighborhood. It's a little bit less money. Then they go down to the C neighborhoods. Most of the people in the C neighborhoods don't want to go to the D and E neighborhoods. So what it does is it creates a more of a demand in the C neighborhoods. And of course, the more demand there is, the higher the rents can go. And that was my experience when the shit hit the fan in 2007, 8, 9. Man, I was cleaning up. My rents went up. When the market took a dump, I started buying rentals. That's when I started getting my larger buildings, most of them. The biggest one I had was 18 apartments and 9 garages. I had a 14 unit, I had a, what else did I have? A 13 unit, 7 unit. I still have a 15 unit. That's actually 8 apartments and 7 commercial spaces. Like that's when my business really took off, is when, you know, the market took a dump. And the wholesaling, by the way, the wholesaling stopped completely. But I was still, you know, when I was making a ton of money wholesale, I mean, there were times where I was driving around in Baltimore City with $20,000 cash in my glove box because people were paying me cash for these contracts because the market was so hot. And I just took all that money and just kept plowing it into rentals, into cash flowing rentals. So when in my standard of income, my standard of living didn't increase. So when the market took a shit, I was making just as much, I was making more than enough money off my rentals that I needed to live. And I still had a bunch of money in the bank to continue to buy them. And then I discovered the BRRRR method, where I was able to buy stuff that was like, you know, needed significant amount of renovation. I'd use hard money for the purchase, the renovation, rent it out, refinance it, and then just keep doing it over and over again. And once I discovered that, I thought I invented it. I'd never heard of the BRRRR method. I just, you know, I was doing some retail rehabs, and I had this fear that, and this is like my own mental block, one of many that I had. So I was always afraid, like, man, if I rehab this house, like, what if I can't sell it? Or what if I sell it and I lose money? Like, I buy it, and 6 months later, I like lose, $20,000. Like, man, that's really going to suck. And what if nobody buys it at all? And then my thought was, well, I guess I could rent it out, and then I could just refinance it and pay the lender back. And once I put those things together in my head, I thought, fuck, like, instead of thinking about that in case I have a retail rehab that goes sideways, what if I use that same strategy to buy rental properties? Like, I'll just come out the gate, like that's my intention. And that's what I started doing. And the beauty of that was, as I said in the beginning of this, I had about $130,000 that I could invest in real estate. And if you're going to put $10,000 out per property for the purchase, after 13, 14 houses, you're out of money. With this method, there was no end. I mean, if your numbers work the way they're supposed to work, which a lot of times they don't, but that's the goal. Maybe instead of being out of pocket 10,000, you're only out of pocket 4,000. But that's a hell of a lot better than being out of pocket 10. Most of the time I did it, I was out of pocket 0. And that's including for the larger apartment buildings. I used hard money for those. And that, for me, the rental properties is the key to freedom. Because when the market takes a dump, people still need a place to live. You're still going to be making money. So that it should be, in my opinion, the long-term play for anybody that's involved in the real estate game. Because the truth is, like, wholesaling isn't real estate investing. Retail rehabs isn't real estate investing. If you don't believe me, ask the IRS. They tax wholesale income like in self-employment income, and they tax rehab income like self-employment income. So not only that, you're paying a higher rate because you're paying double FICA on both of those. For my rentals, I don't. In fact, for my rentals for the first 12, 13, 14, 15 years, I paid 0 income tax because the depreciation, which is a phantom expense, offset the income that I made. Now, I just got my ass kicked with the taxes when I sold a lot of stuff. I think it's going to be close to 7 figures I'll be paying in tax this year. But I'm grateful for that. I mean, I had the opportunity, and that's what Uncle Sam gets. I get, a lot more than he's getting. And so, my accountant was, when he told me what I was going to have to pay, kind of like, told me to sit down. And I was like, I'm good, man. Just tell me. And I said, just tell me the first digit. And he told me the first digit. And I was like, it's fine. I got the money in the bank. I'll write a check now. And how do I put this? So the rental properties, my whole point was that the rental properties, you keep at freedom. And that's what I was interested in. I didn't want to have to keep working and grinding and talking to sellers and, and all that stuff. And then trying to find a buyer. Became too much work for me. And I'm typically lazy. And I think Bill Gates said this. He said, if you want to, if he's got a job that's hard to do, he'll hire a lazy person to do it because they'll find the easy way to do it. That's me. I'm lazy. I'm always looking for the easy way to do something. And so the easy way for me is to automate and delegate. And that's how I built my business.
Okay. So as you're adding to your portfolio, were you doing sub 2 deals, or is it all the hard money and they were just requiring 0% down, or how's that work?
Yeah, with the hard money stuff, I didn't do sub 2s. I was always a little leery of those because I didn't want to have somebody else's credit dependent on me doing what I'm supposed to do. And then there's also that like do one sale clause that most loans have. And I didn't want to ever be accused of anybody of mortgage fraud or participating in mortgage fraud because I was knowingly taking title to a property that had a do one sale clause and ignored it. So I never got involved in the sub 2s. What was the other part of your question? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wondered if the hard money lenders required 0% down.
Yeah, the hard money lenders that I was using didn't require anything down, but that was based on my reputation and my success. And one of the things that I talk about when I speak at different real estate events and meetups and stuff like this is two of the most important things in this business are your network and your reputation. You want to have as many people know you as you can, and you want those people to think good things about you. You want to have 10,000 people that say, "Hey man, do you know Mason Clement? Yeah, I know Mason. He's a great guy." Like that's what you want. That's the gold right there. You could be the greatest guy in the world. Nobody knows you. Nothing's going to happen. You could know 10,000 people, and if all 10,000 people think you're a crook, nothing's going to happen. If you know 10,000 people and they respect you and admire you and think that you do a really honorable, decent job and that you're a good person, man, you can have anything you want. And that's why I do these. It's like I want to help people. If I can say something on here that's going to inspire someone or help someone or give them an idea, maybe looking at things a way that they hadn't looked at it before, and it makes a difference in their life, like, man, I just made a friend. It's probably somebody I'll never meet, but it still benefits me. I would rather have 10,000 people in the United States watch this that I'll never meet and have good thoughts about me. Stuff happens, man. And here's an example. This is a great example of the hard money stuff. So I have a guy that I used to buy used appliances from, and he did my appliance repairs. Not him personally, he owned the business. And he calls me up one day and he invites me out to lunch. It's kind of okay, I guess. I mean, who doesn't want to go out to lunch with their appliance guy? And so we got to lunch and we're sitting down, and he looks at me and he says, "Mark, I'm selling my business. In January, I'm going to have $1 million. Do you want to borrow it?" Now, I'm kind of shocked and surprised. I'm like, I really don't know him that well. And he's been in this business for years. I mean, he sells just about exclusively to other real estate investors. And I asked him, I said, I'm just curious, like, why did you call me? Like, all the people why'd you call me? And he says, well, your tenants were your reference. Of course, that got my attention. I was like, my tenants are my reference. And he says, yeah, he says, every time we go to your property to replace an appliance or fix something, your tenants always speak highly of you. With other landlords, they hear things like, my landlord don't fix shit around here. My stove ain't worked in 6 months. They just hear people complaining about their landlords. And when he's talked to my tenants, they always spoke highly of me. And he thought that if I treat my tenants with that kind of respect, that he can expect the same. And of course, that was true. And that's what I mean. Like, just, your reputation, doing the right thing, even if it means leaving money on the table, so what? You can always make the money back. But if you do something that's really shitty, man, it might take you a lifetime to get over that. So that is, having that kind of reputation has made it very easy for me to borrow money. And just about every deal I've done in the last 15 years that I started using hard money, I think one or two had to come out of the table with money, but after that, like my reputation kind of preceded me, and people wanted to lend me money. And I mean, even my last lender that I was using, he's a title attorney, and I was in his office one day, and he asked me, he's like, "Man, do you know, if you want to borrow some money, call me." And his rates were better than anybody's, and he would amortize it, do interest only. He would do whatever I wanted to do, and I was the only person that he lends money to, and it was based on my reputation. So that's why I stress it so much to people, is because there is so much value in it, and you can't put it on a spreadsheet anywhere. It doesn't show up in your bank account. It shows up when somebody finds a 10-unit apartment building that's vacant, that needs renovation, and they're thinking, "Man, I think Mason's doing stuff like that. He's a cool guy, man. Give him a call." That's how it happens. And you can't predict exactly when it's going to happen, but the more that you give, it's going to come back to you. It's like a boomerang. You know, you can send out shit, and the boomerang is going to come back and, you know, bang you in the head. You can send out good things, and the boomerang is going to come back with good things. And people typically reflect you. So if you're nice, people are nice. If you come out as an asshole, the people are going to come back at you as an asshole. And that's one of the keys to my success. And again, like, I've read a lot of real estate books and watched the videos and all that stuff. And those are some of the things that, like the gurus, they don't talk about, you know, because there's no sizzle to it. There's nothing sexy about it. Just like, know a lot of people, have a great reputation. That's going to take you very far. I don't care what business you're in. That's going to take you far.
Okay. So you did talk about your tenants speaking highly of you, but what's some ways you found to screen tenants to avoid bad ones?
Most of my tenants don't work. Most of them are on government programs. There's Section 8's the big one that, you know, is all over the country, but in Baltimore, in my market, there are several. It works like this: federal HUD distributes money to these local governments. In Baltimore, it's called BHS, Baltimore Homeless Services. And then BHS distributes grants to nonprofits that help people that have different kinds of needs. It could be people that have significant psychiatric issues, people that were homeless, people that have other types of emotional or physical disabilities. And these nonprofits help these people and pay most or all of their rent. And then there's a catch to that. You know, the buildings are inspected annually, just like Section 8. There's an initial inspection and then annual inspections, and you got to keep them up. You know, it's stuff that you should be doing anyway. Make sure the smoke detectors are actually installed and they work. Make sure that, you know, there's no flooding, you know, trip hazards, like stuff that you should be doing to your properties anyway. And so I don't screen them. If they're on that program, they're good. You know, unless there's something, you know, their caseworker says, yeah, they've been kicked out of the last 2 places they're living in because of drug use. Then I have relationships with these caseworkers where they're going to let me know that up front, because I'm one of their like best landlords. And I work very well with their tenants, so they don't want to sour that relationship by giving me tenants that they already know are going to cause problems. So they'll call me up and they'll say, "Listen, this guy's had some issues," and, you know, I'll say, "Listen, I really appreciate you letting me know that. Yeah, I'm not interested." But then they know, like, I'm going to take care of the other 20 of their tenants that I have. So when it comes to screening, that is it. Now, in the beginning, when I first started, I was terrible at screening. Like, you show up, you got the money, we have a conversation for 10 minutes, and I like you, I rent to you. And then having some conversations with some friends are like, "Man, you're crazy, you need to screen them." So I started screening people more. I'm calling their landlords and calling their jobs and, you know, doing case searches to see what their court history is like and all that stuff. And I found that even after doing all that and being very stringent, that my problems I still had the same number of problems doing that as I had when I didn't do that. And that was just me. I don't know what it was, but the way I started to screen my tenants, here's the first thing that I do. It's like, if the appointment to see the apartment is at 12 o'clock and you're not there at like 12:05, man, I'm gone. I'm not renting to you. I don't care how much money you have in the bank. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care about anything. If you can't show up to see the unit on time, you're not going to pay your rent on time. Same with a job interview. If your interview is at 1 o'clock and you show up at 10 after 1, you shouldn't get the job. If you can't even show up for the interview on time, you're not going to show up for work on time. This is the time where you're supposed to be putting your best foot forward, man. I mean, you're supposed to be like shining and, looking great, and you're showing up late. Like you're already disrespecting me and you don't even know me yet. It's like that's my first criteria. The second thing is if they lie about anything during the application process. I do have an application that they fill out online. If they lie about anything, if they say they don't have a record, and then I see that they got locked up 25 years ago for shoplifting, I'm not renting to them. They lied to me. If they say, yeah, I got a record, I just got to prison 2 years ago for a robbery I did 10 years ago, I'll consider that person because they're being honest with me. I've had, here's one of the tricks is people will call it, they'll, in their references, they'll give you like one of their friends' name is a previous landlord or current landlord. And so I'll call that landlord. And during the conversation, I'll say, how's blankety blank? Have they been a good tenant? Has he paid his rent on time? Would you rent to him again? And they're like, oh yeah, he's a great tenant, all this. And then I'll ask them a question. In Maryland, we have to have lead testing done between our turnovers. So if a tenant moves out, we have to have lead testing done and get a certificate before another tenant can move in, unless your house is designated lead free. So I would ask that landlord on the phone, I'd say, hey, by the way, listen, the person I was using for my lead testing, they're retiring. Who do you use? I'm looking for somebody else. Do you have any recommendations? And as soon as they start tripping up over the answer, like, you don't know what you're talking about, it's a fake landlord. It's not the real landlord. And if you don't have lead testing in your state, it could be like, are you using anybody for your property management? Or when you need to replace the carpeting in your house, like what companies do you call? I have a toilet that keeps getting clogged up in this one unit. Who's your plumber? If they're like a fake landlord, they're not going to be able to answer those questions. They're going to start getting tripped up and all. If somebody calls me up and asks me those questions, I mean, I got the answers like this because that's what I do. Or even better, just ask them, who's your title attorney? I need another title attorney. Can you recommend one? And that's where you're going to find out if the person that you're talking to is bullshitting or not. In Maryland, we have there's another easy way to help with this is we can look at the Maryland land records online. And we can see like who the current owner is listed as. So if the owner on the State Department of Assessments and Taxation website doesn't match up with who they say their landlord is, then there's some kind of discrepancy. Well, the person they're saying their landlord is could be a representative of the family. It could be a property manager. So just because there's a difference doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true. It just means that there's a difference that you need to look into. If there was one other criteria that I use for market tenants is 3 times rent. Their income needs to be 3 times what the rent is. That's their bring home income. They have to have at least 3 years of verifiable rental references. I don't want somebody that's 18 years old that just got a job and moving out of mom's house. I don't want that. So those are my criteria. If you're not on a program, those are my criteria.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Back to the wholesaling. When you were doing it more often, can you recall like some of the more difficult deals and what you learned from those to help forward?
Every wholesale deal has its own unique challenges. Sometimes they're very minor challenges. Sometimes they're significant challenges. Like there's a mortgage uncovered that the seller didn't disclose or wasn't aware of. They didn't realize they had this giant second mortgage out there. I've had people, get houses under contract, and then I find out the person that signed the contract didn't own the house. It was his grandmother's who died 4 years ago, and he just thinks he can go sell his grandma's house. Most of the issues are resolved up front before I even get them under contract. Is the property, is it in an area where I know I can find a buyer? If it's an area where it's a board up on a block of board ups, and the guy wants to give it to me, but I'm like, man, I can't even sell this thing for $2,000. I'm not going to waste my time doing it. I can say this: over 200 wholesale deals I've done, every single one of them closed, except for one. And the one that didn't close was the one where the guy didn't own the property. His grandma, who passed away, owned the property. And that's the only one of all those deals. I probably took title to maybe 6, 7, 8 of them because I couldn't find a buyer. And the way I run my business is if I get it under contract, somebody's buying it. Like I don't have all these contingencies in there pending approval by some fictitious partner or some, shit like that. If I don't have any contingencies. There's no repair contingencies. There's nothing. I mean, this is it. I'm agreeing. I'm going to buy your house for $50,000, and I'll sell it within 30 days or 60 days or whatever it is. And I got 30 or 60 days to find a buyer. And if I don't, then I buy the property, and then I'll get it listed or send it to auction. I think of all the deals I've done, I can't think of any that I actually lost a nickel on. I mean, every single one I think I did, I made money on. It might not have been much. It might have been $2,000 or $3,000, but there were some where I made, $60,000, and several where I made, $40,000 just on the assignment fees. So as far as the unique issues, there are just too many of them. I mean, I can give you like examples, but they're all one-offs. It's like the person said that, you go and inspect the house and look at it, everything looks good, and then you find out that there's like all these termites in there that you weren't aware of before you get under contract, and then you discover them after the fact. Well, there's the issue with that is I didn't do my homework. If I discovered them after the fact, then I should have discovered them before the fact. And I disclosed that. I'd tell my buyers, like, look, man, I found this property. It's got termite damage. There's an active nest, whatever. Just be fully transparent with everything. And when you do that, you might have to lower your assignment. Maybe you're thinking you're going to make 10 on it. Now you're going to cut it back to 5 to compensate your buyer for the additional expense that they're going to have in treating for the termites and repairing the damage that you weren't aware of. But by being transparent with all that information, the next time you call that buyer with another wholesale deal, like you've established a good relationship, like you're honest, you're decent, you're running a good business, you're going to tell them everything you know about the property, you're disclosing any defects that you're aware of. So even though you can initially say, man, that's fucked up, I thought I was going to make 10 grand and only made $5,000. But actually by doing that and being transparent about it, now you have another buyer that's on your side, and you can call them up, and it's going to be somebody that like, oh yeah, it's Mark on the phone. He's probably got a good deal. Take the call because of your reputation. So even though things can turn out bad, you can turn it into something good by doing the right thing and building up your reputation even better than it already is.
Okay. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I was looking through your website and noticed that you do some coaching and mentoring. So besides building that reputation and network, can you go into detail more about what you provide for folks?
So here's the good news is I'm not actively doing any coaching or anything. The purpose of this podcast is literally just to help and inspire people. I've had several people the past month reach out to me about coaching, and I'm not doing it right now. I'm actually moving into a different phase of my life where I have some different goals. Right now, I still have 35 units that I own that are, 35 units free and clear. I have no debt. I got a bunch of money in the bank. And, so I'm in a very good point to be. I'm starting a speaking career now. And I don't know if I'm going to get paid for it. If I do, great, but that's my intention isn't to do that. But I want to speak about mindset, and I want to speak in prisons, jails, high schools. Like that's what I'm looking for right now. I want to speak about how I used to have a past in the 80s with pretty significant hardcore drug use and got in a lot of trouble, and something happened that changed my life and saved my life. And I want to share that story with people, and to hope that the things that I've experienced, I've been able to help hundreds of people in real estate, maybe thousands, with different speaking engagements and stuff like that. I want to help the same number of people or more in other areas where it's not just dependent on real estate. It could be just people that just feel like they're losers and bums or whatever. So I'm trying to really get into that business. I joined the National Speakers Association. I've got a mentor, stuff like that. And that's the direction I'm trying to head right now. As far as the coaching and mentoring goes, there's a bunch of videos on my Facebook group, Mark Owens, REI, that I put out there that I'm hoping, can give people some information that can help them at no cost. My biggest piece of advice to people, if you're looking for a mentor or a coach, is in your area, in your local area, start going to the meetup groups. If there are any, start going to the Real Estate Investor Association meetup groups. Start to meet as many people as you can that are in this business. Don't give any of them any of your money yet. You want to spend your, time finding out who's who and who's about what. Because there's a lot of people that exaggerate their success to get you to give them money. And, you'll see people that have been wholesaling for a year and they're mentors. It's like, come on, man, you've done 10 deals. And, so that would just tell you to be cautious. You can get a lot of information for free. Watching, a podcast like this is an awesome opportunity for you to, take away maybe some nugget that could, make a significant difference in your life. And there's a lot of things out there like that. Podcasts are awesome. The local investor meetups and all that stuff are just amazing places to meet people. And I would start there before you spend any money with a coach or anything else.
Okay. It is funny you mentioned that, though. I remember when I was first getting involved, I was attending some virtual meetups like RIAs, and it was just seemed like a large sales funnel to have you join their mastermind for at least $20,000. And it's like, well, I don't want to spend $20,000. I just want to learn. And
right. Right.
Crazy.
Man, I get it, man. And that stuff, I mean, I never joined any, and when I was coaching, man, I was cheap. I didn't look at it like, I didn't look at a client and say, man, how much money can I make off this guy? I looked at a client and I thought, man, what is the least amount I could make where I'll be willing to do this? I come from the complete opposite direction because my interest was in helping people more than making money off of people. But in order to help them, like now you're taking something from me, which is valuable, and that's my free time. So I need to be compensated for my time. So it's like, what's the least amount I'll do this for? Where they're going to get the same quality as if they're paying me 10 times that. And the quality is going to be the same no matter what. If it's free or if they're paying me $1,000 an hour, it's going to be the same content. So the question for me was always, what's the least amount that I'll do this for? And that's where I started at. I went to I don't want to mention the name of it, but I went to a event in Florida several years ago where this whole event was teaching people how to put together like speaking businesses, like real estate coach businesses. And they said, listen, man, they said everybody in the audience is worth $75,000. Just picture everybody with $75,000 over their head. And so what you got to do is you got to get them in your funnel, right? You got to sell them the $1,000 box set, the CD set. And then you got to sell them your $10,000 bus tour. And then you got to sell them your $20,000, diamond, mentoring program. Then you got to sell them your $25,000 platinum. And by the time it's all said and done, if they buy everything that you have, they've spent 75 grand. And I walked out in the middle of it. I'm just like, man, that's not the direction I want to go. I'm not trying to look at an audience and figure out how I can take all the money from them. I'm looking at an audience. I'm thinking, man, what can I do to help all these people? Like, what's the least amount I'll do it for? Because for me, the money's great, but I get a lot of satisfaction from seeing the lights go off in people's eyes and seeing that people are inspired. They see things in a way that they hadn't seen them before. And I know it's going to benefit them. Like that, to me, that's the payment. And it happens to me on a regular basis where I get a phone call from someone or an email from somebody or a bump into somebody, and they come up to me and they tell me that I made a difference in their life. Like they heard me speak 5 years ago and it just gave them a whole different way of looking at things and it changed their life. That's my payment. That lasts forever. I make $1,000, man. I'll spend that shit in a week. I don't even know where it went. Somebody sends me an email saying that I made a difference in their life, or their son heard a podcast I was on and it changed the direction of their son's life. And, they're excited to do things. Like, man, I'll remember that forever. Like I'll never forget that. And so that's why I do these.
Okay, great. Well, I definitely appreciate you jumping on. Did you want to leave any contact information or just have people go to your Facebook group? What do you think?
Yeah, my email address is mark@markowens.com. I got a website. It's for right now, it's geared towards, the real estate coaching thing, but that's going to be changing probably in the next couple months. I got to find a good website builder that's experienced with building websites for speakers. I don't want to have to train them on what to do or tell them what to do. So that's on my agenda in the future. And I'll still speak about real estate. Truth is, if I got a phone call today from a RIA in Philly, they wanted me to come up and speak about my investing experience in Baltimore City, I'd be happy to do it. I'm not selling anything. There's no courses, they're not going to make anything off of me. But if they want me to just come up and talk to, 10 or 200 people to help them, I'd be happy to do it.
Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, I'll be sure to include that in the show notes, your Facebook page and your email and everything like that. So Thanks,
Great.
Lingen, for jumping on the show.
Thanks, Mason. I appreciate you having me.
Sure. All right, that's another episode of Scalable Real Estate Investing. Thank you for tuning in. Please be sure to leave a review and subscribe on whatever channel you're using to listen or watch these episodes. And also be sure to go to scalablerealestateinvesting.com, scroll to the bottom, and fill out the form to sign up for our email. And you could also reach me directly at mason@scalablerealestateinvesting.com. That's MASON at scalablerealestateinvesting.com. If you'd like to get in touch with me to either partner on deals or even be considered to do your own episode on this podcast. Thanks again, and have a great day.